What's going on, everyone? So, based on countless reports, the consensus thought seems to be that the San Antonio Spurs, with the number 2 pick in the draft, is going to take Dylan Harper. Now, in all honesty, Dylan Harper may end up being, the first, second best player in the draft. Obviously, you got a guy in Cooper Flag, which many people think is the surefire, can't miss, number one prospect, best player in the draft, upside potential. But Dylan Harper is a guy that has a ton of upside, potential to be a superstar, right? And is looked at as one of the better players in the draft. Many people's eyes is the clear cut number 2. And so San Antonio going and landing a guy in Dylan Harper, kind of one of those things, take the best player available, right? Especially when you're talking about a young team with plenty of upside and potential, and you're kind of moving in a direction in which, you're trying to lay the foundation, get as much top end, young, versatile talent that maybe you can translate and become, an OKC type thing. Although one thing I do want people to keep in mind is you're going to see it in OKC in the next year or two. They're going to get decimated by the new CBA, right? Because something you got to keep in mind is when you're adding a bunch of young players, right, especially ones that have the potential to be stars or superstars, or, and if they do live up to the hype and expectation, got to keep in mind that those guys are probably going to get paid and get paid pretty heavily, right? So it's things to kind of keep in mind. And it's why you hear the Spurs interested in adding some vets. And, a lot of talks about, hey, they're exploring trades for the 14th pick, that they want to kind of add some pieces and some players that, could help now, right? And then, ideally not just like a year or two, but a couple seasons, right? Obviously, Giannis Antetokounmpo is a big name that's thrown around. Kevin Durant is a big name that's thrown around. Now, I don't think Giannis Antetokounmpo is super likely. I don't think it's unlikely. Based on the reports, it seems like San Antonio doesn't want to have to pony up what they would have to pony up in a Giannis trade, which, I don't really blame them, right? It is one of those things where it's like, how often do you have, or do you get to add, the second best player in all of basketball and immediately make yourself a title contender, right? So, I don't think, if we got news tomorrow that the Spurs traded for Giannis, I think that would be a great move, right? I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But Spurs also want kind of the long-term upside and potential. And then also you look at a Kevin Durant, right? Who gives you, yes, the ability to win now, while also maintaining that youth and foundation, right? To be able to go get a Dylan Harper still and not have to trade the number 2 pick, right? But one of the things with a Kevin Durant, and you can make the same argument with Giannis. However, I think with Kevin Durant, it's even more apparent because Kevin Durant, yes, he could slot into the 4 as well as the 3 spot. You could even maybe make an argument that he's probably better at the 4 at this stage of his career. But regardless, this is just, and I want to be clear, just a fun kind of conversational video, right? Again, I believe they're drafting Dylan Harper regardless. I think Dylan Harper is going to be the guy that they take, whether they land Kevin Durant or not. However, I do think that there is an argument to be made if they do land Kevin Durant. Now, supposedly, Phoenix wants to get a trade done by or before the NBA draft. There have even been murmurs from guys like Bill Simmons and stuff that the Spurs and the Suns may have already agreed to a trade, right? They're just kind of waiting to announce it closer to the draft. Because one, if it's not going to happen till the draft, then, why announce it 3 weeks out? 2, you have the NBA Finals right now. And as soon as that Kevin Durant trade goes through, that's all of the talk. That is the main focus. That's everything, right? All of the focus shifts to that. All of the conversation from the media and everything shifts to that, especially if he goes to a team like San Antonio that has Victor Wembanyama and whatnot, right? So I do think that if there really is kind of a, spit in a handshake deal, more likely than not, that won't be announced for a while, right? However, if you do, let's go under the assumption that they do land Kevin Durant. If they land Kevin Durant after the draft, then I think for sure they're taking Dylan Harper no matter what, right? Because who knows if you get Kevin Durant or not. But if you were to land, or if they already know that they're getting Kevin Durant, Is Dylan Harper still the right pick for a team? Now, again, Dylan Harper may be the best prospect, and you can make the argument with the number 2 pick, you want to take the best player available. However, if they're trading for Kevin Durant, you're not looking for Kevin Durant to be on the team for a year or two, right? Like, and with his game, and even through his game should more likely than not age gracefully. So you're probably looking at Kevin Durant for another, 2-3 years, right? And you already have De'Aaron Fox, who you're about to give a new contract to, and you already have Stephon Castle. So you're going to have them more likely than not be your backcourt, right? You're going to have Kevin Durant that can slot into the 3 or the 4. Do you really want to take another, 6'6" player, or do you want to maybe go get an Ace Bailey or a Malik or, something like that, to where maybe you're getting a little more size, you're getting somebody that can maybe slot in better at the 4, kind of keep Kevin Durant at the 3, right? Now, look, Dylan Harper and him being, 6'6" and whatnot, right, with shoes on, I know his measurements at the combine and whatnot, but talking about, he's a guy with shoes, 6'5", 6'6", right? So, yes, with him and Stephon Castle being 6, like, yes, you could slide, Castle to the 3 or Harper to the 3 or whatnot, but there is concerns about too many cooks in the kitchen, one, right? Because you're going to want Dylan Harper to develop, and, he is a guy that is more likely than not going to be best with the ball in his hands, right? He is that kind of James Harden SGA type, right? Now, Stephon Castle, he's a guy that I think can be that Swiss Army knife and blend in wherever you need him to, right? I think he's a guy that can be that 3-and-D guy. You need me to do the dirty work, whatever, right? But there's also a lot of talk about him taking those steps and being that star for you at some point, right? And De'Aaron Fox, you're probably going to have another 5-6 years. So do you go and take a guy like Dylan Harper and kind of try to figure it out? Or do you look to, again, go get a guy in like an Ace Bailey or Malik or something where, you can slot them in better at the 3, at the 4, give you a little more size, right? Give you a little more versatility, because Kevin Durant you're going to have for the next 3 to 4 years. You're going to have De'Aaron Fox for the next, probably 5 to 6 years minimum, and kind of just better round out your roster, right? Rather than, hey, let's go get Dylan Harper. Because, again, yes, you could get Dylan Harper, and this season you could bring him off the bench if you need to, right? No problem. But how much longer can you do that for? Right? Can you do that for 3 years, 4 years, right? At some point, 1, you're going to have to pay Dylan Harper. 2, right? You want to develop him. You want him to get as much time and opportunity as possible, right? Again, yes, you could play Kevin Durant at the 4, right? But, Dylan Harper's going to be with his struggles, right? Especially at the 3 and having to adjust to NBA level defense and, shooting the basketball and whatnot, right? Like, so again, this is just a pure conversational video. I still believe the Spurs will draft Dylan Harper. I think that there is a bigger argument that you just take him. You take the best player available. You don't mess around. But I do think that there are other guys that are very talented, that are projected to be very good still, and even if they're not projected to be as good as Dylan Harper, you got to think, right? You're going to have, again, several years of Kevin Durant, De'Aaron Fox. And then, your hope is that Stephon Castle emerges into that star, right? And then when, a guy like a De'Aaron Fox starts his decline or, retires or whatever, boom, you're moving Castle into that role, right? To me, it's like, I do think that there's an argument of get a better fit while still getting a guy that has the upside and potential, because the better fit probably gets more opportunity, probably gets more playing time, because he's going to be able to slot into that role in that position of need. And you also still have the upside and potential of that player. You still have that foundation piece and building block, but it also won't kind of hinder him and also kind of bring up question marks, is my point. Again, still they'll probably get Dylan Harper, but just an interesting thought that I wanted to kind of discuss with you all. So let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments. As always, this is a discussion. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot, so we enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one.